Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So it's time to start dressing the ladies, which is one of my favorite parts. I like dressing all of the dolls, but dressing the ladies is extra special because I can do all kinds of different things with their outfits. So I'm going to show you a few techniques that can be used in more than one outfit to just create your own designs. Now, dolls, I'm working on making the bodice to her blouse. I'm actually working on the front part of her blouse. So I start out with a piece that's actually much bigger than she is, but I'm going to cut it down. I'm actually going to split it and do what they call a butt seam. So I split it down the middle after I turned in the edges around the neck, and then I add glue, and I'm going to create a sort of a side hem on the piece, and I'm going to make two of them so both of the sides match. So make sure you hem both inner seams before you try this, and you see me adding the tacky glue on that other inside seam. Now I want you to pay close attention to what I'm going to do. So I just hit it a little bit with my clover iron. But then what I did after I made sure that they were both matched, I took a small piece of fabric and I added glue to each side of it and then laid the two matching pieces on top of this little strip. So watch, I lay one there and lay the other one there. So now the little bodice piece is smaller and more fitted than it was before, and it creates a really nice seam in the middle. Now I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. Now, dolls, I do apologize because I really don't work with patterns. I just cut out the shapes in the way the doll's body is made. Now, there are companies out there that make patterns for dolls, but you have to make sure that the pattern fits your particular doll. And since I make my dolls in all different shapes and sizes, that really doesn't work for me. So to finish prepping this piece of the bodice, I made the little snips around the arm area and added my tacky glue and folded down all of those small little tabs to make it have a nice, neat, finished edge around the arm. Now this blouse is going to have sleeves, but this is the part that's going to be glued on top of the sleeve to make the piece look like it's all one garment sewn together. And it really is a best practice to create all your pieces before you begin to assemble them and dress the doll. Now here I am just rolling those little tabs down with the side of my pointed tool just to make sure everything is laying in order. And I went on to trim off the top of the tabs and then did the snips around the other arm area as well. Now take this opportunity to really focus on each individual piece so that when you assemble, things will be right. And unless you're making something asymmetrical, make sure you do the same thing on each side. And after each piece is created, there's nothing wrong with taking a moment to stop and hold it up to your doll to see how things are coming along. So I'm just kind of playing around with it to see how it'll contour next to her body to make sure it'll go back far enough so it'll meet the other piece of fabric that I'm about to create for the back and how much of a neckline will be showing. So I laid the bodice of the dress to the side and began to create the skirt. Now the skirt, I just took a strip of fabric. Now this strip is pretty long because I'm going to gather the piece of fabric, but first I added glue to the edge to create a very shallow hem. So after I created the hem for the skirt, I laid it aside to dry so I could create the back of the top part of her dress. So I took the same piece that I had just created and cut out a shape of roughly the same size and cut the same shapes around the arm and the neck area so that they would match. But I didn't split the fabric. I just left it in its original state in one piece. And again, matched it to make sure that it was the same size as the original piece because I knew that piece already fit. And I made my little snips and did the glue treatment around all of the edges that I want to lay on top of the garment. Now this is going to take you some time, dolls. This is edited video, so it took me a lot longer to create this dress than what you see here in this video. So take your time, do it piece by piece. If you want to create all the pieces and then dress the doll the next day, do that, but don't put yourself under pressure and don't create imaginary, unrealistic deadlines. Now, although I didn't split this back part of the bodice, I always reserve the right to split it if I need to make it fit my doll properly. Never be afraid to cut or tuck as needed. Now I'm just placing the skirt piece on the doll to determine where I want the skirt to hit her around her waist. Now this doll kind of has a longer torso and short legs, so I need to modify where I set the skirt on her waistline so that it'll cover her feet. So I did go on and add the glue to the back seam of the skirt, and I just ran it along the side, just a few dots of the tacky glue. And tacky glue works really well for making doll clothes. Now you definitely can use liquid stitch or you could use fabric tack, but I really do like tacky glue for making doll clothes. It catches really nice, it's not stringy, and it gives you a little time to maneuver things if you make a mistake. Now that I've glued the seam in place, I'm just trimming it off to make sure it's nice and even before I gather it. So now I've got the hem, I've got the back seam, and I found a pretty piece of green lace that I had in my stash, and I thought it was really pretty, and I thought it would really bring out some of those greens that are already in the fabric. It was a pretty nice piece, but it was kind of big, so I split it down the middle and made it 2 pieces of lace. And here I'm adding glue along the hem of the skirt so that I can add the green lace. Now that the lace is added, I can really see I'm really pleased with that decision. Now, if you notice, I did not tap that lace with my clover iron because that lace is synthetic and it will melt it. Now, I don't do sewing when I make my dolls, but I do a little bit of sewing when I do their clothes, especially when it comes to the ladies' clothing. Now I created just a straight stitch all around her waist just to gather the skirt part of her dress, and I think it made the gathers really nice. It's going to make her fit on her body really cute. Now I do it on the waist, and I sometimes do it when I'm making a puff sleeve for the ladies or the girls' dresses. So I don't do a lot of sewing, but with certain styles, it's just necessary. You really want to get that really good gathered look, which you can only really get with needle and thread. Now, if you can achieve it with just glue, please send me the link to the video for that hack. So I did end up splitting the piece of fabric that I cut for the back of the bodice, and I ended up overlapping it for the back of her dress. Again, always reserve the right to split the fabric to make sure it fits and tailors to your doll the best way. Splitting it in 2 pieces really just helps a lot when you're trying to contour it to the doll's body. So I didn't show myself making the sleeve in this portion because I've made the sleeve twice when I was making the men's shirts and jackets. It's the same concept, but for the ladies, I really like puff sleeves dolls, and I like it to have a puff at the top where the shoulder is. So this is the other instance where I do use my needle and thread to just do a straight hem right around the top part of the shoulder of the dress to give the look of a high puff at the top of the shoulder. And also, I just think this looks very feminine, very girly. It's not necessary, but it's a feature that I absolutely love, especially on the younger women and the little girl dolls. Now, I want you dolls to pay close attention here. I'm adding glue inside, under the sleeve, around the wrist area, and I'm kind of pinching it, twisting it, and pushing the sleeve up the doll's arm. And to me, that gives it a much more natural look to force the fabric to just have a more natural drape to it. And I do the exact same thing on the other arm. I trim off the excess, I push the sleeve up, I add the glue around her wrist, and just repeat the twisting and pushing motion to make sure both the arms match. Now, dolls, here's the part where I truly begin to assemble the dress and bring it all together. Now, I always put on the sleeves first, the sleeves and the skirt first before I begin to add the bodice. Now, I created the bodice first, but I don't add it on till last because it's the part that has to be the most precise and fitted up to the doll's body, especially when you're doing a woman or girl doll, because you want it to be fitted and you want it to be neat to really contour and outline her waistline and the bust area. Now, if you're making more modern styles, this won't really be necessary. You can kind of do it kind of loose and baggy, but for the types of dresses, for my time period, I want the dresses to be fitted and very contoured. So you see I'm actually applying the tacky glue to her actual body and gluing the bodice portion of the blouse or dress right up against her waistline with the clover iron to make sure that the glue cures. And I'm doing the same thing to the top part of the bodice after I've got the back one on. and I'm just laying it right up to her body where I want it to be and making sure everything lays like it should before I add my glue. Now, if there was ever a time that you need to incorporate the dry fit, tri fit method, this would be it, because you want to make sure things are going to lay where you want them to lay when you put it together. Now you see I'm adding a little glue around the waistline because that I want the hem of the bodice to lay on top of that glue. And I'm pressing everything in just the way I want it to lay on her. And if you need to tuck it a little bit, you tuck it. Up at the top, you're going to need to fold the shoulders in. But definitely take your time with this and make sure everything is as neat as possible. So now I'm getting to what I consider to be the fun part, which is adding all the details and the lace. So I took that very same lace that I put around the bottom of her dress and I put it over her shoulders and across the front, and then added it around the ends of the sleeves to be a really cute cuff. I thought that added a nice touch. Now the dress is complete, so you can add as much or as little as you want. Now I'm going to just let you watch here, dolls. This doll's dress was made basically the same way. I made her sleeves a little bit different. I made her sleeves a little bit shorter and a little bit fuller, but I still added the puff treatment to the top where the shoulder is. But I did the bodice of her dress a little bit differently because she had a full upper body. So I added glue across the middle of her back and laid the back part of the bodice of her dress a little bit lower just to show the top part of her back. I still fitted it around the waistline area and actually glued it directly to her body because her previous dress was glued directly to her to give her a very contoured figure. Now here, just show me doing the sleeves the exact same way I did the other doll. And I did push them up a little bit because her arm was a full arm, a full forearm. So I made it a little bit higher so more of her arm and wrist was exposed. Now in this frame you can see the front of her dress is a little bit lower, but I'm adding the trim down the front to give it a little decorative element to make it look a little bit different from the other doll's dress. Now that's something I always try to do to give each lady's dress a little variation. So each doll will have a little individuality, something special about their own personal style. So after adding the eyelet trim around her neckline, I used it to finish off the edge of her sleeve. So now that those two ladies are ready to go, let me get this pretty lady all together. Now this lady's a little bit more grown up, a little bit more mature, so I wanted to do something different with her outfit. Now again, with this outfit, I didn't show how I created the skirt because I made it exactly the same way that I made the other two, but I wanted to do something different with the top of her dress because I wanted it to look more like a jacket, and I wanted it to be a suit with the puff sleeves, but I wanted to give the jacket or the upper part of her dress look like she had a peplum. Now here I'm just going ahead and making her sleeves. You all get to see me make the sleeves again, which is the exact same process as when I made the sleeves for the men dolls. Now if you haven't seen that video, there will be a link in the description for making a men's dress shirt and a blazer jacket. Now even though this is going to be a jacket, I still have to make the top part of the bodice just like I did with the first dress, adding the two pieces together, but I just laid the connecting piece on top. Now, as I mentioned, this part of the dress is going to be more like a jacket rather than connected to the skirt. I guess I need to turn those sleeves right side out. So the sleeves and the front part of the bodice are done. Now I'm creating the back part of the jacket. Now I will go ahead and let this part play because this could get a little tricky. Now when making the men's shirts, the sleeves are generally looser. The ladies' blouses or jacket sleeves I do make a little bit tighter, so trying to turn them right side out is a little bit more of a challenge, but you want to do it very, very carefully so that you don't break the seam or rip the fabric. Now dolls, in this frame I'm actually gluing the peplum part of her jacket to her waistline. I actually just made a little short skirt portion and just glued it on top of the long skirt to create the look of a peplum for this jacket. And again, I'm just adding the glue. And if you look closely, you can see that I left the front of the little peplum open in the front to give the illusion that it was buttoned from the front. Now from this angle it may be a little hard to see, but I've added glue to her back so that I can add the back part of the bodice of her jacket to the top of the peplum portion. Now after I felt confident that it was glued pretty well around the waistline, I began to make sure it fit nicely over her shoulders, and I'm adding the front piece. Now notice when I assemble, I always add the front piece last because it's the most prominent and the part that I'm most concerned about being cute. And I'm just tapping it with the clover iron to encourage that glue to cure. Now here you see me adding glue along her waistline where the seams go to make sure all of that stays nice and secure. Now here's a part I really want to encourage you to take your time. When you get close to completion, sometimes you want to rush to the finish, but resist the urge. See it all the way through. Taking your time will make you way more satisfied with your end result than if you rush to the finish and make unnecessary mistakes. Look at your piece and determine if you need to make any adjustments, because the tacky glue is very forgiving, it dries clear, and many times even if you get it on the outside the fabric, the clover iron will pretty much melt it away. So at this point her suit is looking really lovely. I really love the way that turned out. It looks so cute. Now it's time for me to do her a few details and enhancements to really bring out the style and the shape of the suit, but the basic suit itself is complete. So you can add as much or as little to your completed suit as you like. Now here's another angle of me adding that glue under the sleeve, just tucking it under there with my toothpick with a little glue on the end and twisting it and pushing it up away from her hand. Now because I really wanted to enhance and bring out the shape to the design of her suit, I added the same little eyelet trim around the hem of the jacket, around the hem of the skirt, down the front of the jacket, and around the sleeves. And I really think it brought it out a lot. It made you really be able to see the shape of the jacket so that that would really stand out as a prominent part of her outfit. Now this particular doll, I'm not going to go into a lot about her dress because it's made exactly the same way that the other ladies' dresses were made. I just detailed her dress a little bit differently by adding lace up around her neckline. I just cut out a section of a piece of lace that I had and glued it to the portion around her neck between the two puff sleeves. And to enhance her look a little bit more, I added lace to the bottom of her sleeve. Now that these ladies are all dressed, they're ready to get their hair done. Now, if you've enjoyed this video today, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, like, share, and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.